From the crossroads of the Ozarks, it's PID Radio. Welcome. I'm Derek Gilbert.
Hi, I'm Sharon Gilbert, and we are delighted that you have chosen to join us again. Just handing a list. This just came in. No, this is actually from...
Breaking news. As Rush Limbaugh used to do, he'd always have his stuff there.
Someone is just... Don't do that in people's ears. That's loud.
According to... Yeah.
That's loud. He's rattling a piece of paper. Like it's something important, which it is, actually. Yeah. This is a list of the places we're going to go when we're in Israel.
Our itinerary.
And we leave a week from tomorrow.
That is correct. So there will be no PID. Well, I guess we can do PID Radio next Saturday because we leave next Sunday morning.
Yeah, we can do that. And we're dropping the dogs off on Friday.
Yeah.
Yep. So we will have Saturday to pack our bags and get ready because our flight leaves at 6 a.m, which means we're going to have to get up about 1:30 or 2.
Yeah. We've done that before.
It's
not our favorite thing, but it is what it is.
We have done it. In fact, we've had to do it and pick up Josh on the way to the airport.
That's true.
We can do this. Derek and I don't mind this. It's going to be a long day, but the Lord is so very good to allow us to make this trip, this solidarity trip to Israel. Get to see our friends again, Aaron Lipkin and Yishai Avital, and maybe some of the others.
One of the other guys, Ron Silberman, will be joining us in Tel Aviv just to say hello because he works there, and we wonderful tour guides that work with Lipkin Tours. And so actually Ron reached out to us, which was, and I had intended to reach out to him. He just beat me to it.
He did. He jumped into that before we got a chance. And so those of you who are joining us, we are anxious to see you again or to meet you for the first time. And those of you who could not go, we understand completely. If you want to go to Israel, consider going with us next spring.
The Iron and Myth Tour, as we welcome special guests, Dr. Judd Burton, Pastor Doug Van Dorn, and Timothy Alberino.
Crazy town.
Yeah, we rolled Tim's tour into next year's because we were scheduled to go with Tim this year, and of course things just didn't work out because of the conflict there. But Tim and his lovely wife Jasmine will be joining us. It will be a rolling conference through the Holy Land as we pray things will have been peaceful enough and secure enough that we can go visit the sites that are currently still off limits. A lot of the areas that we visit on our tours are in the north, and as we're driving to some of these sites, you see that fence there? The other side, that's Syria. That's
exactly.
Lebanon.
I know that someone asked, why do you never go to the West Bank? Well, a lot of the sites we go to are in the West Bank.
Yeah.
And many are up in Samaria as well. So Samaria, West Bank, they don't completely coincide, I don't think.
No. But as far as Israelis are concerned,
the Venn diagram.
Yeah. Judea and Samaria is the West Bank.
Yeah.
And 80% of biblical history took place there. And since Lipkin Tours, Aaron and Eddie Lipkin live in Ophrah, which is in Samaria, they go there. In fact, we introduced Jonathan Kahn to Aaron Lipkin because Jonathan goes to Israel. And when we first returned from our first tour back in 2018, Jonathan came up to record programs with Skywatch TV, and we were talking about how we just returned and we'd visited
I think it was the 2019 tour because it was when we went to Joshua's altar and we explained it. Or was it?
No, it was 18 because we had just come back and we'd mentioned that we'd been to Bethel and Shiloh, and he said, wait a minute, those are in the West Bank. Yeah. Did you need armored buses? No.
That's why I thought it might have been 2019 because we did take one visit to Joshua's altar was an armored bus simply because it is a stone's throw from the city that belongs to Resheph.
Yes, ancient Shechem. It's on a hill overlooking that valley in which Shechem, Nablus, currently sits. So, for security reasons, when you go to Joshua's altar, you need an escort from the IDF and armored buses. But Shiloh, Bethel, Argamon, other sites in that region, no. You just go. And so we introduced them and Jonathan, because we take like 2 buses. I think we had three on our last tour. But Jonathan his tours take like 14 buses.
I know.
It's like a whole military operation.
It really would be because frankly, 2 buses was, we didn't get to meet everybody. 3 buses, there was no way because you and I, we host one bus. And then the other folks who went with us, Carl Gallups went with us one time. Mike Heiser went with us another time.
Zev Porat.
Exactly. Whoever is our guest, Doug Van Dorn. Then those individuals are on the other buses. So if you want to be with Judd Burton or you want to be with Timothy Alberino, when you register, ask that you go on their bus.
Right. And they will do their best to accommodate when they assign bus seats. And
if everybody wants to be on Tim Alberino's, well.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That bus is always the last one there. Yeah, I know. It's driving riding pretty low to the ground.
Everybody's in there.
But they assign people to buses, and you stay on that bus for the entire tour, just so that we can do head counts to make sure we don't leave anybody behind. We're 2 people short after leaving Joshua's or whatever.
Well, and the other thing is, if you're sitting there thinking, well, I want to go by myself, but it's double occupancy unless you want to pay more. Sure. And that's generally how it is. Yeah. You can do that if you want to pay a little more and get a single room, or you can ask, could you put me on a list for assigned, roommates?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And we've had friends people who have become good friends. Right. Because they were with a roommate.
Yeah. And shared in an adventure and got to know one another.
Yeah.
So, in fact, there's a group from last year's tour, the 2023 tour, that still talk to one another on Zoom a couple of times a month, regularly scheduled Zoom calls. And it's really wonderful because you share and keep up with one another. So how's your daughter doing? How's your health issue? Do you need prayer for anything? And it's really wonderful. So next March 25th through April 3rd, with the optional 3-day extension to Jordan. And again, we're praying that the security situation there is calmed by then. Where we're going next week is a special 1-week mission to see for ourselves some of the things that have happened and how people have been affected by this war with Hamas.
We want to be witnesses on the ground. I've seen a lot of, because of this rise in anti-Semitism, you will have college students who just absolutely say with certainty that this is going on and this is going on and this is going on. And I would challenge them and say, when's the last time you were there?
Probably never.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, and if you want to look at the itinerary, and frankly, as you're listening to this last minute, April 27th, and we are flying out on the 5th. Many others are flying out on the 6th to arrive in Tel Aviv on the 7th. So it's really short notice. But if you are so led, there is still time if you are moved to join us on this. Right now, it looks like a group of about 10 people. You can find the link to the Lipkin Tour site at our site, gilberthouse.org/travel. gilberthouse.org/travel, and the itinerary is there as well, so you can look at where we'll go.
Yeah, you can still, but I would do it if you seriously want to go, contact them ASAP, because
right away
you will have to figure out a way to get there. And Derek and I, we had a little bit of trouble making sure that our flights worked out, which is why we have to leave so early. We're flying from Atlanta to Amsterdam and then down to Tel Aviv. Right,
and that's Amsterdam flight stops in Cyprus to refuel, so it's a 3-stop tour as opposed to
a 3-stop tour.
As opposed to past trips where we'd fly to Chicago and then Chicago straight to Tel Aviv, or fly to New York and then from New York to Tel Aviv. For whatever reason, those direct flights are either very expensive right now or just not happening. So we've had to, kind of bounce around a little bit.
Right. But if the Lord is telling you, you are supposed to go, then he will make those flights work out, because we were convinced we were supposed to go, and we were amazed. Lipkin Tours arranged for the flights.
Yeah.
And they found, I tell you what, they're geniuses.
Yep.
They found the best flights.
Best options. So we will be there, and we'll be reporting via video on a daily basis. I'm going to commit to doing that, so that as we're on the ground each day, and then in the evenings, as time allows, I'll edit together whatever we collect, even if it's just a short, 1-minute thing at on site, because I think this is going to be really powerful. Some of the places that we plan to see, the villages in the south that were attacked, and then a historical location that we've been to before, but not since 2018, Gush Etzion, which is,
that place just makes me cry.
It made me weep as well.
We were there in 2019 because we've been twice. We missed it this last spring.
Correct. Right. And boy, when you go through after seeing the presentation, this is essentially Israel's Alamo.
Yeah.
And when they take you to the last location, here's the final redoubt, the bunker that was the last stand of the people. And
my gosh, you walk through it, and it really does make you weep. And it gives you an idea of what they are facing now in Israel, because this is almost like a return to the late stages of 1948. And then, of course, after the Independence Day in 1948, May 14 of 1948, then there was another war that started.
Right.
So it has been almost constant upheaval in the land of Israel ever since they started repopulating it there. So please, if you want to join us, you get to be an eyewitness on the ground. Not very many people can say that they were there.
True. That is very true. And I know. One of the couples that's joining us said that they feel like there's a sense of destiny in this. We've had other friends who are, not going with us, who are reaching out to us. Are you sure this is a good idea?
Yeah, but we've also got a lot of people praying for us.
Yeah.
As
and
we're
we
over
do
there.
appreciate that.
And from our reports from people who live there, that it's far more peaceful than the mainstream media over here is making it seem.
And we've seen that firsthand when we've been there. When we were there in 2018, and you had the days of rage in Gaza because Trump moved the American embassy to Jerusalem, and people were freaking out. Are you okay?
I know. Every time we've been there, something's happened.
Jerusalem is really peaceful.
Maybe we shouldn't go. No, I'm only joking. That's one reason that Derek wants to daily and perhaps several times each day make a report for you.
Yeah.
So you can hear from him what it is that we're seeing on the ground in Israel.
Right.
So yes,
that'll be coming up in just over a week. So, but meanwhile, as you mentioned, the protests taking place here in the United States, there've been protests at
the 1930s all over again.
It really is. College campuses all across the country suddenly, and if you believe the media, it's spontaneous. It's like, really? Because that encampment at Columbia University, for example, in New York City, they've got matching tents.
I know.
Where did they get all of those matching tents? And all of them in green, of course, which is the color of,
Yes.
Like, oh, wow, isn't that interesting? Well, as it turns out, there is an answer to the question, how is this happening? It apparently is being funded by activist organizations.
George
Soros. Yeah. I know he's sort of held up as a bugaboo for conservatives.
But the truth is,
it must be Soros. Yep,
he is funding an organization that funds an organization that funds an organization that funds one on the ground that is making it possible. So it's that idea of distancing himself from the actual act by various layers.
Right. And
it's like a Russian doll.
I'll put a link in the notes to an article by Daniel Greenfield writing for Israel 365 News, so you can see that we're not just pulling out George Soros because everything that happens from a conservative perspective must be George Soros's fault. It's not that. It's that there's some documentation that he is funding a network of left-wing organizations that are funneling money into these student organizations and getting them out on the street. There's a viral video. Rudy Giuliani shared a video to social media this past week. It was unintentionally hilarious, unintentionally on the part of the young ladies who were being interviewed. But somebody was going around and interviewing protesters. Why are you here? Well, for Palestine and stuff. Okay, why? Well, Israel did some bad things. Like what? Well, I don't know. And she turns to her friend. What did it? And the other friend says, I wish I was more educated on this. In other words,
you're a student.
They didn't know why they were there, essentially shouting, Palestine will be free. Well, okay, death to the Jews, essentially, is what they're shouting.
I'm raising my hand because when I was in high school, mind you, because these young ladies clearly graduated from high school and managed to get in a very fine university.
$70,000 a year?
Yeah. Well, money doesn't mean it's a fine university.
True.
But when I was in high school, history, civics, sociology, they all covered things like this to the extent that one of the things that I did as a student was attend as a representative to a mock UN. You went in with the understanding of geopolitics is a real thing.
Right.
Help me to understand why this side is warring with this side.
Kids don't have that today.
I guess they don't. What are they studying? Equity?
Yeah.
Diversity?
Well, yeah, critical theory. Elon Musk posted something to X yesterday or the day before, but he said that we in the West have this strange mindset of it used to be, the old saying was might makes right. And for a couple of generations now, several generations, kids have been indoctrinated into the idea that weak makes right. So the oppressed must always necessarily be right in their worldview. And because Hamas is oppressed, they're right. Because people of color are ostensibly oppressed, they must be right. Well, that ain't necessarily so. But that is, in a nutshell, critical theory.
Neither axiom is correct.
Exactly. Just because one is dominating another group doesn't mean the group that is dominating is right or wrong. That is a separate issue entirely. But critical theory, on which Marxism is based, teaches that there are two classes of people, oppressed and the oppressors. And the oppressors are always bad and the oppressed are always good. So kids are taught to view the world through that prism. You are either an oppressor or you are the oppressed.
And oftentimes I find that those who are spouting the idea that those who are oppressed are the ones that, are in the right, are the individuals who've grown up with privilege.
Yeah, because if you're going to a $70,000 a year university like Columbia, then I would suggest that you are not in the oppressed class. The young man who has emerged as a leader to this group, and it was revealed this week that he was going on his social media feeds and literally calling for the death of Zionists.
Is that not cyberbullying?
Well, again, viewed through critical theory, because he's supporting the oppressed, because the Zionists are, he basically said, and it's like, okay, dude, your worldview is so warped. He was saying that Zionism is basically white supremacy. Like, wait a minute. I think that would come as a shock to Jews.
Yeah.
Because
they're white adjacent.
They're white adjacent, right. And that's how they justify discriminating against Asians who tend to overperform educationally. No, we can't let in too many Asians. We have to let in some more people of other colors adjacent. Because they're white adjacent. That's why they're so good at math.
First of all, I just find the term white a little bit misleading because truly I don't have white skin.
No, that is true. Albinos are closer to it than we are.
So do we have to go after albinos?
Yeah. I've gotten a few emails from time to time because I tend to be kind of ruddy complected. And there are guys that's like, dude, you need to, tone down the makeup on 5 and 10. So I'm not wearing makeup. That's just my normal skin color.
Now, for a while, I did actually use sort of a yellow makeup on your face to tone down the red. Yeah. But your natural color is towards the ruddy. Mine is more towards olive.
So I'm more of a red man than some of the red men out there. I actually, because I've got this area up here on the bridge of my nose because of my glasses and because I wear those breathe right strips to, every night.
Right. It's always almost
right. So the top of my nose is kind of red. So I've been using it like on the top of my nose just to tone down that spot.
Oh, I put it over on my desk, by the way.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
so I can move it back to your news desk if you want. Yes.
Anyway, it is a misnomer, but critical theory.
In the summertime, I get really dark.
Yeah. And during our tours of Israel and because during COVID lockdowns, we were locked down. It's like, hey, research shows that most of us in America anyway, are vitamin D deficient. And that has a strong correlation to bad outcomes if you catch this disease. So we just sit out on the deck and get some sun to generate natural vitamin D. Plus we supplement. Vitamin D pills are really, really cheap. Anyway, you get dark. And so you're not white anymore anyway. But critical theory says because the dominant culture here in the United States, because it was founded predominantly by English people, Angles who are Germanic from Northern Europe, we must be the oppressors because, and so we need to be overthrown. The problem with critical theory is that, okay, once you have that transformation, the oppressed rise up, throw off their chains and become, they get rid of the oppressors. They're now
the oppressors.
They become the oppressors. And now you've got a
cycle.
It's chaos is what it is.
It is exactly what it is.
It's a doctrine.
A snake eating its own tail.
Yes, it is a demonic doctrine, literally a demonic doctrine because it is a constant cycle of violence and struggle. You never live at peace.
Well, speaking of demonic doctrine, we talked about earlier, we mentioned that it's like the 1930s again. Well, in the 1930s, we saw the rise of the Nazi Party, the National Democrat Socialist Party.
Yeah. Oh, socialist.
Yes. And they were helped up that little hill to dominance by communists, gays, gypsies, a whole lot of oppressed groups because communists weren't very popular. And these helped the Brownshirts and all of those who were followers of the Hitler doctrine into power. But when Hitler got into power, he turned on them.
Sure. gee, just like in the book of Revelation, when the 10 kings turn on the woman who rides the beast.
Pretty much that same idea. So those who are now helping the Antichrist to rise to power, whoever that turns out to be, they are probably going to be first up for going to a concentration camp, because that's where Hitler sent them.
Yeah, and that even happened in the 1930s with the stormtroopers, the Brownshirts.
It also happened
later pushed out and by the SS.
Well, because their leader was getting too much power.
Yeah.
And they were taken over as they were becoming real street bullies.
Yeah.
And it helped for a while, but then it became chaotic and a rival to Hitler's power.
Right. Can't have that. What's really chilling is this past week, video went viral of the protest at Columbia University, where I believe it was that same student, because I'd have to go back and look at the video again.
Or anyway, leaders
of this group. Anyway, forming a human chain around the encampment and then taking a step forward and another step forward and to drive the Zionists out of the camp. And it's really chilling to watch that video. And I will put a link to that as well.
It is. Because it's a repeat of something else.
Well, it is. It's chilling in two ways. Because one, you've got this call and response thing that we've seen repeated at protests since the last 4 years, or over the last 4 years.
Oh, they've been going on since the 60s.
Take one step forward, another step forward, another step forward. It's like you've got a bunch of zombies who are just blindly following orders. But this idea of the human chain to keep the Zionists off campus, 1938, the Brownshirts did exactly that at the University of Vienna.
And by the way, another thing that Hitler did, and it's done by nearly every dictator, you have to take out the intelligentsia.
Right.
You have to take out the academics. Because if they're not touting your line, academics have to go away.
Because they know things like history, where they can say, hey, this is just like what happened in 1917 in Russia.
And that is the thing about erasing history, erasing books, because he burned books.
Yep.
If Hitler had the internet, can you imagine how swiftly he could have risen to power?
Or the Bolsheviks in 1917. What we are seeing is a repeat of things that happened 100 years ago, and we are living through it now. We try not to be sensationalists about things like this, but I can say honestly that, in my opinion anyway, as we're looking back at what happened 100 years ago, the Bolsheviks, the Nazis, and what is happening now in the United States, it's like I can see now how Stalin and Hitler came to power. And because we're making the same mistakes in 21st century America.
And the irony is that those individuals on the campus who are performing these chains and chants and, these anti-Semitic acts, they are calling you and me Nazis.
I know. They weaponize language and appropriate it in order to sell their message.
Yes. And anyone who disagrees with them, you have to be a Nazi. Nazi is one of those terms now that's just thrown out there for anything that is anti-establishment. And I do mean anti-establishment.
That young man at Columbia was in his rants online, and now he's trying to walk it back. After CNN interviewed him and didn't call him out on this the following day, after he started getting pushback when conservative media outlets started posting his videos and saying, hey, did you see here how he's calling literally for death? Oh, those comments were wrong. Because Columbia, to its credit, did suspend the student, just as Ilhan Omar's daughter got suspended.
Well, sorry, you go ahead and finish that, and then I need to say something.
Yeah, so it is encouraging that there were some steps there that are being taken, but in many other cases, the universities are capitulating to the protesters. Like Southern Cal has canceled its commencement exercises because they're afraid they might have some security issues with the pro-Palestine protests.
Well, did you see the story that the Biden government they want legislation that sets up a monitoring system for campuses.
Yeah.
To make sure that anti-Semitism doesn't happen. That's the excuse.
Right. But as with any government program, there will be mission creeps. Like, well, okay, we've solved anti-Semitism, but I don't want to give up my phony baloney salary.
Who does the monitoring?
Yeah.
The monitor lizard, of course. But seriously, though. Yeah. It's one of my favorite cartoons, monitor lizard standing there.
In the
this
hallway.
Guy, yeah. Do you have your pass? I was a hall monitor at one time. It's not a fun job. But Ilhan Omar's daughter said she was homeless now.
Well, I don't know that she said that, but I know that's how that was reported by
it was
Axios.
reported that she said it.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not she actually did.
I know. I was going to mention that when I brought her up, because the media report that she's homeless. Yeah. Homeless and without food. It's like, excuse me, her mother is a United States congressperson.
And she can't move in with mom?
Does Mrs. Omar not have any, or is it Ms. Omar?
Whatever.
She's still married
she
to
has
her?
No food?
Yeah. Yeah. It makes no sense. Oh, look at this poor starving student who's going to a $70,000 a year university.
Yeah.
Sorry, not buying it. What is even more bizarre is the story from the University of Washington. You see that? Just this morning, a talk show host out there named Jason Rantz, perfect name, R-A-N-T-Z, Jason Rantz, reports that the University of Washington Progressive Student Union has announced that
there's a progressive student union?
Oh, yeah.
Excuse me?
The UWPSU, University of Washington Progressive Student Union, announced that they had postponed Thursday's UW Palestine encampment. Why? Because there were too many white students involved.
What?
Yes, the group had received criticism for not including Muslim and Arab students in organizing the protest against the evil Zionists.
Okay, so the pro-Palestinian students tended to all be white?
Yep. And
that tells me a whole lot. It's that idea of egalitarianism only means that I get to be the one with the money and I tell you what to do.
Yes. White savior syndrome.
Yeah.
Too many white saviors in the pro-Palestine protests.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, the encampment was scheduled for Thursday morning at the University of Washington campus in Seattle. UW administrators had told Jewish students on campus they were not going to intervene, but it was postponed because now you've got warring factions of extremists squabbling over who gets the credit for demonizing Jews.
Well, you mentioned earlier that, boy, this world.
Hilarity ensues.
I know. You mentioned earlier that the tents in the tent city on Columbia campus were green. And again, because they were nice tents, who bought those? And they all match. But green being that color to represent the Palestinian cause, it's one element within their flag.
Right.
Red, black, white, green.
Oh, the four horsemen of Revelation chapter 6.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Our good friend Tyler Gilbert was just recently here. Love his research. You need to get his book because I think he's brought out stuff that you and I have missed. So I need to go back and reread his stuff because he talks about the four cardinal directions being represented by these entities that are coming. In other words, each horse and rider, they come from a different direction on the compass, north, south, east, west. If you look at, and this is the research I was doing the other day, if you look at ancient representations worldwide of the cardinal points on the compass, you see that these deities are often represented by colors. And they are generally white, red, black, and green.
Yep.
So is that what John was trying to tell us? And if so, what can we glean from the recent occurrence on the streets of London that there was a black horse and a red horse, and the red horse was covered in his own blood?
Yeah. Yeah, that was...
So you had white, red, and...
Chilling.
White, red, and black. It's never happened in modern times that these cavalry horses that are extremely well trained, a cement delivery, I don't know if it was a truck or what, but there was a big accident that caused a huge load of cement blocks or whatever to be dropped to the ground. Forgive me for not having precise details, but it's difficult to find them. That spooked the horses. The horses were in the middle of being prepped for their daily exercise, And they often walk, as in daily walk, through the streets of London with riders on their backs. These horses had no riders because they had been spooked. There were initially 5 of them, but the videos are all of these 2 that were running together. And it's assumed that, by the way, they're at least one, if not both of those horses were in surgery.
Yeah.
And are now recovering. And I pray that they recover fully, because this is tragic. Now there are calls in London to never have horses on the streets because they're dangerous. Well, horses running at full speed down a street full of cars and buses and people.
That would be dangerous.
That's dangerous for the horses.
Right.
That's why the horse had blood on him, because he actually ran into a bus, I think.
Yeah. And again, the colors in that were just startling.
Really startling.
Yeah.
To see that happening during Passover week, for that to occur.
Interestingly, as this occurred just after it, BBC is reporting that British troops may be deployed to Gaza to help deliver aid.
Yes, that's another story that I had meant to talk about this morning, so thank you for going to that. That, as of this morning, is an assumption based on an announcement that the UK is helping with the construction of that flotilla sort of wharf.
Floating pier, yeah.
The floating pier. That because the U.S. ship had to leave, and there's nowhere for the construction workers to sleep, because they're not supposed to sleep in Gaza.
Right. President Biden, back during his State of the Union address, announced that the U.S. would build this floating pier to deliver aid much more quickly than is coming through the border crossing at Rafah from Egypt. This promise was made. They said within 60 days we'll have it. And according to military.com, reporting just over a week ago, one of the ships that was deployed for this mission had to turn around. It had a fire in the engine room, had to return back to Jacksonville, Florida on one of the 2 engines. No injuries, thankfully. The sailors were able to put it out with fire extinguishers. But when military.com started digging into the story, they found that other ships that are supposed to be part of this flotilla, so 5 other Army ships left for the Mediterranean after Biden's announcement in early March, and they're on the way carrying heavy equipment, material needed to build this pier. But other ships are running into issues. An academic and shipping expert told military.com a week ago Wednesday that one of the Army landing craft utility ships, the Wilson Wharf, appears to be stuck in Tenerife. That's an island that's part of the Canary Islands chain. It's stuck there because it's got serious mechanical issues. Another one, a logistics support vessel, the General Frank S. Besson, spent a week in the Azores before finally making it to a Navy base in Greece. This reportedly indicates the ship had an engineering issue, and they interviewed a retired Army Chief Warrant Officer who comes out of the Army's watercraft community. He asked not to be identified, said, and I'm going to quote now, "If those boats don't have multiple major mechanical failures, I mean dead in the water mechanical failures, I will be shocked. They're horrendously maintained. I've got videos of these things falling apart."
Oh.
So in other words, according to this officer, quote, "They're going to have a lot fewer pieces to work with as far as building the actual pier. The other rub point is security arrangements. These boats have next to no security. You've got a couple of 50 cals, machine guns, and small arms, and the vessel masters are not taught maritime tactics."
Well, they're not battleships.
They are not. And the men on board the ship, Army men, are used to fighting on ground, if they're used to fighting at all. I mean, again, these are U.S. Army soldiers on board these watercraft, probably engineers and construction guys for what they're intended to do. But according to military.com in this article, the ships that have been deployed are not really ready for what they've been tasked with. And in fact, we saw in the news yesterday that somebody launched a couple of mortar shells at the group that is there and has begun construction.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that and more after this break.
Summer reading season is just around the corner. We want to help you get ready.
You can buy fiction, you can buy nonfiction through the Gilbert House store, whichever you want. All of our books are 40% off. 40%.
That includes all 8 novels of the Red Wing saga.
Book 9 is coming, probably early summer.
My 2 novels, and then, of course, all of our nonfiction stuff, including our most recent books, Giants, Gods, and Dragons, The Second Coming of Saturn, and Veneration, a deep dive into the cult of the Nephilim.
April and May, you get 62 days. No,
Absolutely.
61. April only has 30.
Regardless, through the end of May, 40% off on all of our books at the Gilbert House store, available only online. Go to gilberthouse.org/store. You'll find all the prices slashed on our books, 40% off, gilberthouse.org/store. And thank you for your prayers and support.
God's creation is full of mysteries. What were the giants in the scripture? Did dinosaurs roam the earth in the days of Noah? Are we alone in the universe? Join speakers Derek Gilbert, Rudy Landa, Michael Hoggart, Greg Patton, Mac Dominic, Josh Davis, and Micah Van Huss to explore the topics your Sunday school teacher didn't talk about at the Mysteries of the Bible Verse event in Cincinnati, Ohio, June 7th and 8th.
Welcome back to PID Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert, and we want to have you enjoy PID Radio.
Yes.
You know, be wide awake when you're listening to PID Radio, because I've been told my voice tends to make people fall asleep.
We hear that a lot of
I know.
Listen to Sci Friday every night as we're going to sleep.
It's so great.
Really?
Steve Quayle even said to me one time, "Would you read bedtime stories? Because your voice just makes me want to fall asleep." And I said, is that a compliment? I can't tell. I love Steve Quayle. Love him so much. Boy, it's been a while since we've seen him. We got to find out when we get to see him next.
Get in touch with Tyler.
Yes. Yeah. His son. Love him. Coffee.
Yes, we've got coffee available at the Gilbert House store, thanks to Kevlar Joe's Coffee. The link there will take you directly to the Kevlar Joe's website. 3 blends to choose from. The cookies and cream flavored blend named for Grace, Amazing Grace.
She is amazing.
Snarling Dachshund, which is the smooth Sumatran coffee, because Sam was a smooth-coated dachshund. And Derek's Bunker Buster, named for a view from the bunker. That is the dark roast, the bold Colombian blend. We like that one a lot.
We got to arrange for the Morning Glory blend.
Yeah.
By the way, in case you're wondering, Glory is now 26 pounds, just under. And she is 20 weeks old.
She was 10 pounds when we got her.
Yeah.
So she is packing on the muscle.
She is all muscle.
Yeah. She and Grace, they keep each other well exercised.
They do. And they keep us exercised too.
Yeah. So gilberthouse.org/store for the coffee. And you'll also find a link there to Simply Clean Foods. Chance Gibson, who we've known for 7 years now, thanks to the Hear the Watchman conferences. In fact, he was a guest on this program several years ago talking about preparedness.
We need to get him back on talking about this really non-GMO, organic.
Yep. And
stuff you can eat today.
Well, exactly. And that's what they're trying to do, is show people that the freeze-dried food doesn't need to sit on the shelf for 20 years to be useful. You can actually get it and then open it up and use it. It's easy to prepare, but 100% GMO free, and that's the thing. So follow the link at gilberthouse.org/store to Simply Clean Foods. We've tried some of it. We had some of the coffee actually too that he
it was delicious
just yesterday. So, but the freeze-dried fruits and vegetables, freeze-dried prepared meals, basically. Add water, heat, and there you go. Again, that's guaranteed GMO-free, and you'll find the link at our store, gilberthouse.org/store.
And while you're at the store, take a look at our books, because they are all 40% off through the end of May. And by the way, speaking of our store, just a reminder, because we will be in Israel, and we'll put this up at the store page, we will not be shipping because we will not be here.
Correct. So
it's just Derek and I, we're the two, we do everything. We will not be shipping during that week. And we've got a friend who sometimes comes over and helps out. She's going to be out of town too. So nobody here.
So anyway, in fact, I got to run some orders to the post office later this morning.
And thank you for that.
Well, thank you for doing all the packaging of these orders.
Well, I meant thank you to the people who ordered them. But
yes,
thank you for taking them. Thanks all around.
Amen.
Well, you were talking about building the pier in Gaza, and yes, there have been attacks on the men and attacks on the construction itself. We have now advisors engineers and workers in Gaza. It looks like the UK may be sending at least a ship for them to sleep on, but also possibly individuals wearing boots in Gaza.
Right.
This is how Vietnam began, people.
It is. And there are those who think that the reason the United States is building that pier is not to deliver aid as much as it is to take control of Gaza away from Israel.
Mm-hmm.
So we shall see. The Ministry of Defense in the UK not commenting on the BBC's report that they plan to deploy soldiers on the ground. I just think it's a bad idea because Hamas really wants the rest of the world involved here. I'm a little surprised that they would fire rockets, they would fire mortars at the guys building the pier.
Well, I'm not so sure that they really want aid to come in.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Because the longer this drags on, the less support Israel has from around the world. When Iran fired its missiles and drones at Israel, suddenly the opinion needle shifted back towards Israel for a little while, but once again, it is shifting back in the other direction. The longer this drags out, the worse Israel looks in the eyes of the world because we forget. We've got short-term memory, and October 7th, well, that was 200 plus days ago. That was a long time ago. I guarantee you the families of those 1,200 people who died and the 134 who have not been returned home don't forget. And the world should not forget either. Now, Israel has not yet attacked that southern enclave, Rafah, where they believe there's still a battalion of Hamas fighters there. They're working on plans to evacuate the citizens. But, I mean, this is the difficulty in fighting an enemy that doesn't care. I mean, it does not fight according to the rules of civilized conflict.
Well, that is so true. But don't forget also that Israel is fighting multiple fronts.
Multiple fronts. But trying to fight in a way that very cognizant of public opinion around the world.
Mm-hmm. And the fact that they are still here, it amazes me every day. I think Israel is just such a miracle that they began, that people were, frankly, that the Jews lasted for 2 millennia.
Yeah.
With all the pressure that's been on them since the year 70 AD, if you just want to start there, but it was before then too.
Really, 136 was after the Bar Kokhba rebellion. That was the final straw when Hadrian said, "Okay, that's it. We're going to take 900,000 Jews and we're just going to sell them in the slave markets and get."
And they were dispersed throughout the world. The fact that they have maintained their identity and returned many of them to the land of Israel, the land of promise, and that they have kept that nation going and become so strong. Little bitty Israel is causing the entire world governments to just quake in their boots.
Which is remarkable when you look at the numbers involved. There are, 14 million Jews worldwide. There's like 1.6 billion with a B, Muslims, about equal number of Christians roughly. And Israel, on the list of world religions, is not even in the top 10.
No, and Israel is surrounded by Muslim nations. They have Muslims, many of them living within the borders themselves. And I got to tell you, when we've been over there, we've met a lot of Muslims.
We have.
And they're wonderful.
In Jordan.
They welcomed us.
Wonderful. Yeah, absolutely. Our customer service at the hotels in Jordan the 3 times we've been over there, absolutely spectacular. In fact, I would say that in the Jordanian hotels, we probably get better service than we got in the Israeli hotels.
It was real, but there was good in the Israeli hotels
absolutely.
too. Jerusalem and Nazareth. In Nazareth, oh my gosh, they're so sweet. But what we're saying is the representation of the Muslim sentiment is not the representation of the entire group of Muslims worldwide.
No, it is
it's
not.
a tiny, tiny, tiny sliver.
But the fact is that those are the ones who are living most closely to the teachings of Muhammad, and they're the ones who are willing to. They have no fear of death. They have no fear of sending you to your death. How do you fight an enemy for whom death is no deterrent?
That's a really good question.
And has no qualms about using innocent bystanders as human shields. Hamas is doing that deliberately. It's been known for years that the ambulances in Gaza are essentially a taxi service for Hamas fighters. This is why they've got those tunnels and offices complex, bases basically beneath hospitals and mosques and schools, and because they want the Israelis to hit Well, for example, there's evidence that's come out that the targeting, and we talked about this previously, the World Central Kitchens, aid workers the IDF may have been baited into hitting that convoy. Hamas wants that.
Yes, they do, because it makes Israel look so terrible.
Exactly.
And makes them look like they're victims.
Because it's militarily, Hamas knows, the leadership of Hamas knows, they have no chance of defeating Israel on a one-to-one on a basis. If they were to meet in open combat on level ground, Israel would wipe the battlefield with Hamas.
But they're currently winning on propaganda.
They're winning on propaganda. This is how they fight. I mean, now I was going to go into a rabbit trail and start talking about
let me
things
just say this,
really...
because you mentioned earlier that there were over 100 hostages. There's no proof that they're alive.
No, in fact, Shin Bet reportedly, and they've kind of walked it back, saying, no, we didn't say that. That's not an official estimate, but there are reports out of from Israeli media that Shin Bet thinks, that's Israel's intelligence service, thinks that, or security service rather, Mossad is the intelligence service.
Yes, exactly.
Shin Bet thinks that there are no more than 40 who are still alive, and though there was a report by, I think it was Channel 14 in Israel, that somebody familiar with the negotiations in Qatar said they don't think that even Hamas believes they can come up with 20 humanitarian hostages, meaning women or children or elderly, that there may not be more than 20 of them alive. And not all of them were in Hamas possession. After all, many of them were just shunted off to Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and others are just like free agents, criminal gangs in Gaza. So when they're dealing with Hamas, negotiating with Hamas, it's not like Hamas actually controls everything that happens in Gaza. What's really happening here is just a supernatural conflict against a dark god and his minions who wants Israel back under his control.
Now, earlier before the break, we were talking about the rise of Hitler and how in 1929 a lot of things occurred worldwide, or at least I briefly mentioned it, that helped to vault him to power, just helped him get the opportunity, let's put it that way. And that was the crash, the Wall Street crash in 1929, October of 1929, actually. It would be really interesting if in April 13th of 2029, 100 years almost to the day, but not quite, when Apophis comes through. If that knocks out satellites, which knocks out banking and knocks out trading. Yeah. Because it's coming within 20,000 miles of the Earth. That gets into our satellite area. Yeah, it is, inside some of the farthest satellites. We're really heading into a very interesting period of history, because a lot of the initiatives to develop central bank digital currencies have targeted 2025. In fact, Maxine Waters. I was going to mention her.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. She is saying that a stablecoin bill could be ready for vote in the House of Representatives soon. Well, if Maxine Waters says it's good, it's probably fine.
She's been anti-digital currency, and suddenly she's all for it. Oh, Maxine, honey.
She's the top Democrat in the House Financial Services Committee. Now, Republicans control the House of Representatives. Republicans in name only. I think Speaker Mike Johnson, somebody got to him. He voted against aid for Ukraine before he jammed the bill through this last weekend. $60 billion more for Ukraine, even though multiple reports from the corporate media that, hey, we really don't know where that money's going. In fact, there was a report that our CIA director, William Burns, had to go over there and have a sit down with Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, and say, Vlad, it's come to our attention that you're skimming too much money off the top. Your generals are getting upset, and frankly, they're stealing too much money too. According to this report, some 30 generals were on a list handed to Zelensky. This is almost like something from a film noir from the 40s. Listen, Vlad, the boys back in D.C. have got a message for you.
Is Claude Rains in the cast of this movie anywhere?
I am shocked to find gambling going on in here. So when Zelensky fired 10 of his top generals, apparently that was a in response, sort of a half-hearted response to, okay, yeah, we've got some generals who are living pretty high on the hog. You got people in Kyiv seeing these generals now driving around in brand new Mercedes on a general's salary.
When some people don't even have a house to live in.
Right. So he had to let them go just to kind of make a show of, all right, we're okay. You're going to give us another $60 billion. I'll fire these guys just to, make it look like we're cleaning up the corruption. But apparently the White House, and again, this is part of this report that I'll have to find it again. Again, we're not making this stuff up. Everything we get is from open source intel from what we consider to be credible sources, that the White House has shown a distinct lack of concern over the corruption for all of the billions that we have sent to Ukraine. We're sending money there. There was a report this past week that a couple of Ukrainian soldiers were stopped with cases of hand grenades that were trying to smuggle out of the country to sell on the black market. It's like, look, the war with Russia is lost. Why should we throw these grenades at the Russians? It's not going to make any difference. Let's try to make a few bucks in the meanwhile. So Zelensky was basically warned by the CIA director, stop this. The White House doesn't seem to care. And apparently, according to this report, it is causing a serious crisis of confidence in the intelligence community, by the intelligence community on the White House, which suggests that the deep state is now shifting back to, we got to get rid of this guy. I mean, okay, politically, we agree with his policies more than Trump is the lesser of two evils. That appears to be what's going on here, if we're reading this right. I'm holding my hands because I have to get back to the idea of peering into darkness, which is what we're all about. Yep. Yes, we talk about geopolitics all the time. Derek and I are fascinated by it. Right. But we need to look at the spirits behind it, look at the theopolitics. Right, what's going on in Washington? You talked about the deep state. Yeah. Deep state are puppets of... Finger puppets of the principalities and powers behind the scenes, right. Lieutenant Colonel Robert McGinnis with his book, The Deeper State, and he will say privately when you ask him that just from his 50, 60 years in Washington, D.C., his mother's serving as personal secretary to Jean Dixon, who was an advisor to Nancy Reagan. Yep. He's seen this political witchcraft taking place, borrowing a term from Peter Levenda in his Sinister
grimoire.
Forces. A grimoire of political witchcraft. What a brilliant subtitle for his series called... I just had it. Sinister Forces. Yeah, political witchcraft. That is really what's going on behind the scenes. The deep state exists because it's essentially a parasite on the body politic. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what it is. It's a big old tick. Right. But it's the tick in politics. Exactly. And politics just means a lot of them. A lot of them. But if they kill the host, they lose their source of being. Yes, exactly. So there are those in political analysts who believe the deep state is swinging back to Trump because, okay, look, there's no other Republican who's challenging him with Republican voters, but we cannot stand 4 more years of the Biden shuffle, which, by the way, is Axios, which is a left-leaning news source, broke a story a couple of days ago that you'll notice if you see video of Joe Biden walking from the White House to Marine One to go back to Delaware for another vacation. He's always accompanied by aides who are walking between Biden and the cameras to conceal the fact that he's just sort of shuffling and stiff and looking that's old. What you exactly. When you get older, there's a tendency to look down at your feet. Yeah. So you start to stoop a little bit. And you don't pick up your feet as well, so you just kind of shuffle along. I get that. I'm only 62, so I'm almost 20 years younger than Biden. And I don't walk the same way I did when I was 42. That's a fact. I walk like an Egyptian. But they're trying to hide it. But the deep state is like, okay, we'll say that we're supporting him, but we're not really supporting him. So that is where we are headed. But yes, the Congress... Coming back to the stablecoin issue. Stablecoin is basically we're still on the theopolitics. The theopolitics. Coming back to the theopolitics. To the theopolitics. Of stablecoin. What's that got to do with anything? They basically separate us from actual money so they can crash the economy. Going back to 1929. Yes. And going back to Apophis. Right. All of what happened in 1929 with the collapse of the stock market in the U.S., the Great Depression, that was essentially a great reset. There was a mountain of debt, a house of cards built of debt. Well, guess what? That's what the current global economy is built on as well. Mm-hmm. The World Economic Forum is pushing for digital currencies. The central bankers of the world, U.S., the U.K., the European Central Bank, the Chinese have already launched their own central bank digital currency. Put that out there and replace physical money, which is not backed by anything anyway. Although there are some movements in some of our states here. Missouri is considering it. Texas has passed it. Just can we back the state's reserves with gold or something? You decouple money from anything real and tangible, just make it a bunch of bits and bytes, and suddenly the central government of the world, forthcoming, will have total control over your livelihood. You become completely dependent on this central bank digital currency. This is not to be confused with something like Bitcoin or Ethereum, where it's a decentralized network that's reconciling all the transactions. A central bank digital currency can be programmed to prevent you from spending it in certain places. Hey, you're outside the boundaries of your 15-minute city. Hey, you're trying to buy religious propaganda.
Speaking of Apophis, yesterday or the day before, because my sister visited yesterday. Hi, Faye. Hi, Mike. When I was watching television to relax I never totally relax, to be honest with you. You and I always choose some sort of form of entertainment, quote unquote, that either helps sharpen our writing abilities when it comes to fiction or helps us to learn something for our nonfiction writing or for your programs, the like PID Radio or View from the Bunker or 5 and 10. We try to watch something that is educative or educational. I watched a movie because I was in a mood I just want to watch schlock, which is mindless entertainment. So I watched a movie called When Worlds Collide, 1951. It predicts the idea that a planet with its sun, mind you, are coming at the Earth and will collide with it. The planet will go by close enough to cause earthquakes and volcanoes. And then the sun will come along and just blast in diverse places. Yeah. And then the sun will come along and just blast everything out. So how the governments of the world reacted to that was much like my fictional opening to Tom Horn's book about Apophis. The idea that it's a secret project. You can't tell people because if they start to panic, we lose the world economy that is the engine keeping us in our phony baloney jobs. So we need to keep everything calm. And then maybe at the last minute we'll let them know because obviously they're going to see it in the sky. Yeah. But in the movie, and When Worlds Collide, the secret science project was the stupidest idea for blasting this rocket off so that it could get past get away from the sun that was coming in. The sun was called Belus.
Oh, interesting. That's Greek name for Bel, which means Lord in Akkadian.
Yes, yeah. Lord Shamash was coming into Shamash, the Earth. And the rocket was supposed to try to catch up with the planet, and I can't remember, it started with a Z. Like, I'll think of that in a minute. You could look it up if you want to. But this planet was going to be their new home if they could catch up in order to get the rocket off the Earth rather than actually blasting off. Mind you, this was 1951. Rocketry was still pretty new. And that it used a big track system to propel it in any sort of at an angle out of our atmosphere. And when you watched the rocket take off at the very end, it just was barely moving. It's like, how is that going to escape our gravity? Come on. But anyway, they did.
Zyra, that's
it.
Zyra.
Z-Y-R-A, Zyra.
Yeah.
And that actually, I think, had a good meaning, which couldn't figure out why the writers decided to call it Zyra. But it was eerily like what some people are saying could happen on the Earth when Apophis comes that close to us. And mind you, when NASA says it will come within 20,000 miles of us, that's assuming that nothing changes. There is a phenomenon called Yarkovsky effect.
Actually,
Oh,
Actually. Yeah, the Yarkovsky effect has already been observed on Apophis. There was just a story. I'm glad you reminded me of this. There was
and
a
those
story
are
a couple
elements
of weeks
within
ago.
space that we can't bank on. It's sort of like it hits an object that we didn't know were there, pulled by gravity here. Who knows what's out there that might be acting upon it, or even on the asteroid itself that might be changing its orbit.
Yeah, GB News reported a month ago, actually. Actually. The trajectory has changed. They found that the asteroid's picking up speed. It's sped up due to the Yarkovsky effect.
Oh, so it may get here before April of 2029?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Let's see. They showed that the asteroid is drifting away from a purely gravitational orbit by about 170 meters per year. So
That's interesting.
About 450 feet per year, which is enough to keep the 2068 impact scenario in place. Small, but non-zero. But of course, that's assuming no further changes between now and 2068 or between now and 2029, in fact.
Well, it's hard to say what's going to happen in 2029. It is very possible that it will make a very close flyby past our planet. But remember, and this is how we need to end, that the Lord God Almighty, the creator of all of us and everything, is still on the throne and still in control. And none of this is surprising him.
That's right. So we need to wake up each day and take advantage of the time we still have to fulfill the Great Commission.
Yep. It's
Make
one of the
disciples.
reasons.
Yep.
One of the reasons we're going to Israel.
Amen.
Because we believe the Lord is still in control.
That is correct. So while you have the time today, talk about your faith, the hope you have in Jesus Christ with family members, with friends, with colleagues. Yeah, we could go on and on, but that is the one thing we need to remember. Regardless of who's in the White House, regardless of who has the presidency of the United Nations, who's sitting on the UN Security Council, who's running the World Economic Forum, God saw all of that from the beginning of time. And guess what? Guess what? He picked you to be alive right now to counter their influence in your sphere of influence.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
He knew you before you were formed.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I would say he's known you, he's known me, he's known all of us since before he spoke everything into existence.
Amen. What a time to be alive.
Oh, I know it.
Yeah.
I know it. I think that the first century disciples would, hey, I want to be alive then when Jesus comes back.
Amen. Like Dr. Michael Lake says, just imagine Paul, Peter, and the apostles leaning over the rails of heaven, cheering us on.
Along with Tom and Mike and so many others who've gone before us.
Your dad, my dad.
I know.
Yeah. Amen. Well, tomorrow morning, the Gilbert House Fellowship Bible Study. We're back in the Proverbs, and so we hope you'll join us then. Tomorrow evening, 7 p.m. Central Time, A View from the Bunker with Mark Sutherland, our friend from the UK, joining us. We talk about the rise of anti-Semitism in the church. Yeah, since October 7th, a lot of this has just come out of nowhere. It's just come out of hiding, and it needs to be addressed. So that'll be tomorrow, vftb.net, or better yet, get the Gilbert House app, gilberthouse.org/app. All of our content is always there. Cancel proof yourself by getting our app. Until next time, I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and for Grace and Glory who are in the house, bye-bye, everybody.
PID Radio is produced by Gilbert House and released under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Follow us online, Twitter @PID Radio, or the PID Radio page at Facebook. Join us each week for our online Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship, online at gilberthouse.org.